I wanted to explore with this morning um, an aspect of the perspective that I'm always pointing to, and you could say one of the kind of implications of it, the felt sense of it, and that is invulnerability. And funny enough, it's an invulnerability that's discovered not by trying to protect ourselves, which ironically creates a sense of vulnerability, because now there's something to protect, and that something we imagine needs to be protected feels vulnerable, which is why we're trying to protect it. It's kind of how that works. That the discovery of this radical invulnerability comes about by realizing our complete vulnerability. Complete vulnerability in the sense of no separation. What could be more vulnerable than there's nothing protecting me from something else, right? There's no protection here. There's no barrier here. There's no shield here. There's no boundary. So, ordinarily we have this sense, maybe you have it right now, of sort of being localized here. You, the body, mind, the creature that we live our lives as to varying degrees, navigating this world of people, places, and things, and as an individual. But it's very strange, because even though we have that sense, at the same time, what we think of as the localized, separate, autonomous individual is unbounded and inseparable from everything. So just let yourself feel that, feel into your own existence. Here I am sitting here, this undeniable sense of being, right? And just relaxing and noticing that there is no wall in your experience as you feel experience. Forget about all the ideas about being separate for a moment, but just feel what's here. This flow of experience, we could call it. And notice how it's unguarded, it is undefended, it is without any walls, any boundaries, any dividing lines. And just relaxing into that complete openness and undefendedness, complete intimacy with everything. It's like everything is touched. Everything is being touched. It's just connection, absolute connection, intimacy. Just relaxing into that unboundedness. That there's not a separate, bounded individual creature in the middle of this vast field of what we call the world of experience. There's no one at the center of this moment. There's just this moment, which is undivided. The ordinary perspective we have is, as I said, one of vulnerability. There's something out there and we're in here. Something in the form of a world, of other people. And yes, in one sense there is. We have that. We're very familiar with that way that life can show up as these isolated parts and pieces all interacting with one another in this amazing dance, right? It's actually a lovely part of, it's a lovely way that reality can be experienced as separate things interacting with one another in connection and communion with one another. It's beautiful, and it's also at the same time can be the source of what we call human discontent and suffering. Because from the position of being the subject of experience, in other words, the world is happening to me, events are happening to me, other people are happening to me. It's like that sense of being on the receiving end as an individual of the world of experience brings with it that corresponding sense of, well, I could be potentially threatened by that, which I'm receiving, which I'm on the receiving end of, right? That's the vulnerability. I could be harmed by that world. I could be judged by that world. I could be derided by that world, criticized by that world, overwhelmed by that world, stressed by that world, which includes, when I say the world, all of it, our work, our relationships, the whole thing. But, as you're just sitting here with eyes open, if you want to open your eyes, if they're closed, and just here's this sense of perceiving, and there may be that sense of being an individual perceiving a world, but just feel what's here and notice how there's no one at the center of this field of experiencing. There's just this field of experiencing. It's undivided. There's no separation anywhere. There's one thing here, which isn't really a thing at all. It's some inconceivable dance of pure, fathomless indescribability. And from that perspective, there's no world that could impose itself upon us. In other words, that whole way that life is typically related from that perspective, that brings with it that sense of potential harm and threat and so on, is just one perspective. And there's this other perspective, which is there's one thing here, one dance of energy, one dance of consciousness, one dance of, can't say what it's a dance of ultimately. I just feel that. It's really, instead of an individual feeling life, it's life. You are life, feeling life. In that sense, there's no division, right? It's just life, feeling life, feeling life, feeling life. And so there's not two things. In other words, there's not one thing that can impose itself on another thing. And that's why I say this other undivided perspective is completely invulnerable. There's nothing defined because there are no things. When there's one thing, there are no things. There's just this singular, limitless expanse of infinity. Feel the relaxation of that. Feel the relaxation into that invulnerability, that pure intimacy, life intimate with itself, unguarded, nothing to brace against, nothing to protect against, no one to be protected because there's no one at the center of this, no separate individual at the center of this moment. There's just this moment, centerless. Just this moment, centerless. Nothing, nobody, no person separate from and at the center of this. Again, we may feel like we're at the center of this moment of experiencing. It's occurring to us, but if we just look and feel what is this individual, what you will feel is life. You will feel being, you will feel existence, you'll feel presence, you'll feel this, and this has no boundary, has no border to it, has no edges anywhere. It's complete openness. That's what I meant by all completely vulnerable in that sense, but it's a misleading word because it suggests someone who's vulnerable, but it's just open. It's just pure openness. Pure openness. And openness is it's completely at peace because there aren't separate things separate from the openness to be struggling with. There's just this openness, this vast expanse. Which interestingly enough includes everything in its infinite embrace because it is everything, the vast expanse. And funny enough, that perspective of the undivided, open, radically open vantage, if you will, no separation, just this beingness, this presence, inclusive of everything, including the perspective of separation that we all know quite well. Very familiar with that one, aren't we? Just feel the ease of that undividedness. Nothing to find, nothing to search for, and no one to find it or search for it. Just this, as it is, in all its dynamism and vitality and diversity and mystery. From this perspective of it's, this is indestructible. Nothing can break this, nothing can harm this, because everything is this. So there's not something outside of it to come crashing in upon it and destroy it and harm it, right? There's just one thing. And this is what we are. This is what we've always been. We've always been the ocean. Even as we dance these seemingly temporary lives as individual waves, we've always been the ocean. And before birth, during birth, after birth, death, we always remain this, right? What else could we possibly be? This staggering miracle that is giving rise to everything inexplicably. No boundary. That's the invitation to look and experience and see if what I'm saying holds up under scrutiny. If you notice this in your experience, this lack of findable boundaries, it's quite something, isn't it? Because we certainly presume that there are boundaries and separation at one level. We believe that the world is separate and divided. But experience reveals something altogether different, doesn't it? We think of the world as separate from us, but we only know the world as experience. And in that sense, we are the world, literally, the world of experience, which we might think of as kind of small. It's just my little experience, but experience is infinite, right? You don't find the end of it. It is the infinity. And it's just our everyday life. This infinity just looks like our everyday life and our challenges and our triumphs and it looks like anything and everything. But it always remains this unbreakable whole, this inviolable, invulnerable being.